All right, so we're going to be assembling this sauna today, and the first thing is we've got the base down and we've got the back section, which you can tell because there's a break in it, which is where the seat plinth will actually sit up. So that's how I can tell which is front and back. But before you locate it, you need to think about your location. I mean, I've got a beautiful location beside the pool right here, but be mindful that if you've got full weather coming in, so if your prevailing weather condition is from the southeast and you've got weather coming in all the time, it's just going to punch into the front of the sauna, you've got a greater chance of getting water ingress into the sauna. So just be mindful of that when you're locating your sauna, and obviously you've got to be located somewhere near where you've got power to make sure that you can power your sauna when it's set up. So we've got this base down, and the important thing we've got to do here is to make sure we're sealing the walls that come in to the base, because otherwise you'll have water ingress through the base where those walls meet the floor, and so we've got to avoid that. So I'm going to be running a bead of silicone right through the base here as we put on each wall panel, and it's just to make sure we've got a strong seal there to avoid water ingress in future. All right, so one of the key factors when you're setting up your sauna is to make sure it's nice and level. And especially with your outdoor sauna, the only thing you may want to consider there is you don't want it to have fall back into it, because you don't want water to hit the glass and then at the foot fall into the sauna. So if anything, on an outdoor sauna, you might just put a fraction, say a 5 millimeter gradient from back to front, just to give it a bit of fall. But depending on where you're setting up, you might have a requirement to do a bit more packing. And the one thing you want to do is make sure you pack it all the way around. So what you're going to be doing is grabbing your level right at the start when you first put your base down, and just check the level at the front, check the level on the sides, check your diagonals, and just get that really nice and level. And once it is level, you're in a position where you can then start to, if you decide if you're outdoor, you can put, say, a 5 mil packer right across the back, and that'll just make sure that the whole thing just falls slightly towards the front and stops water from ingressing. But on a normal indoor sauna, you don't have so much of a problem if you're not worried about water ingress. Sound good? So yeah, you just want to make sure you've got things nice and level, and check the other edge. And this one will have a little bit of fall from back to front. So you'll see it's just off level there. And so I lift that front a little bit. So I've just got that little bit of fall. So that's all it needs. You'll notice I've got a little packer at the front there. I've got a couple of packers there. So just do that leveling up as a starting point. Okay, so I'm going to be running some silicone right along this edge here, along the base here, to make sure that I avoid water ingress into the sauna. So what I'm going to be doing, I've just cut a angle on that. I'm just going to be running a bead of silicone right through here. So I'm going to set that back about 2 centimeters from the edge. I'm just going to run a big bead of silicone that runs all the way along this edge. You just run your finger as a guide. You just basically just push it along. It'll be an even distance along. Now, just to be safe, I'm going to do a double bead of silicone. So I'm going to do another run. All right, so that's my first step. So that's where the back wall is going to sit. Okay, so we've moved that back wall into place, and this is where you really need a helping hand to make sure that this works. So we're going to be lifting this up onto where we place the silicone. We need to make sure that we get the cables out of the way when we put it on, and our objective here is just to lift that up and so that it's equally spaced on here. So as we lift it up, we just need to make sure it's totally equally spaced. So you might end up with 5 mil each side. It'll depend on exactly how this sauna fits, but we just start with that sack. So lift it up, take a bit over, go over first. No, keep going. Yep. You've got that, that's caught. Yep. Now we come back. Get that plug out of the way. Now where is yours? How far off the end is yours?
Oh, not that much, just a little bit.
Okay, so come my way.
Yep.
And so we just got to leaven it up so it's even on both sides. Right, that's moved a little bit. Come back there. Okay. So I'm going to go and grab a side wall panel so we can lock that into place. But first, while Zach's holding that, I'm just going to run another bead of silicone. Now I've run the double bead again there just to play it safe. Now, when you're putting this in place, just got to be mindful that you've got a couple of power cords that you need to make sure they're out of the way. So I'm just going to be lifting this up for just a moment, and I'm going to be locating it so it beads up against this area here. Before I do, now I'm just going to run a small bead of silicone just up against this edge, all the way through, to make sure that we don't get any water ingress. Run it all the way up there. So this is going to lock it together, so if you are ever going to planning to move it, if you're ever going to plan on moving it, you probably wouldn't put that silicone down that edge, but if you want to ensure that it's going to be waterproof, that's the best way to do it. So I just locate this. I'm just going to Okay, so as I'm doing this, I need to pull in this clip. So basically I've got to over center that clip and then pull it in. I over center this clip and pull it in. Now that's going to lock that whole wall side in place. And I just give that a little nudge just to make sure it's hard up against that inside edge there. So that's all in place. I've got a tiny little bit of silicone there. Just going to clear away. So that's your first part of it. So you don't have to hold that now. That's going to be solid. Yeah, I'll give you a hand with it, mate. Actually, no, we've got to do the seat. Okay. So the next piece to go in is going to be your seat base. You have got a cord on that, and that is going to be plugging into your back wall. So that's a fairly critical thing. The other thing that you're going to have here is that you've got, can you grab the camera? Just keep going. Just bring it to me. So one of the things we need to do here is to make sure we connect these. So this is for the lights in the side wall. And that's as simple as that, will just clip into place. So I'm just basically pushing those together and that locks those in place. Okay, so I'm just putting this into place. This just splits in. You'll notice there's a small gap here where that's going to be sitting. And basically I can plug this in. So I've connected that connection, I've connected this to the back, and now I've got the seat base coming on. The other thing I need to connect is this to the sidewall. And when we put the seat bench in, we'll be doing the same. We'll be doing a similar thing when we put that next side in. So the bench top just sits to there. And that's all going to be locked in place once we start to secure all this up now. So the next part to go in is the next sidewall. So I'm going to run a quick bead of silicone on both sides so it's all ready to go, and then we'll lock it all away. Yep. So again, just notice how I'm using my finger as a guide there, just to keep it an equal distance off it. And I've ended up doing a double bead all the way along this sidewall. just along that bead. Yep. So I just need to again connect these power points before I can clip it all together. Snap that one into place. And I plug into my side power for your heaters. So that's now located in place. I'm just going to be clipping those again to lock it all away. Just do a wipe through on this edge just to make sure that's all sealed away. Okay, in this instance I've actually already pre-assembled the front door glass, but we'll go through that in a separate video. In this instance I've already run my silicone along the front there, ready to accept it, and I'm just about to run the silicone down this edge, ready for it to clip on. So. Up into place. So can you lift it up on that edge? Yep. That's it. That's perfect, Zach. Now, need to get that in alignment. Get that one in place. Those in place. And now I'll use these over center clips again to put this together. We'll pull it all in tight. Next piece to go in is the ceiling piece. Speakers are to the back. So basically it's going to come in over the side here. It's going to be easy if you've got someone inside to help take the weight of it to move it across. Remember, if you come here, Zach, there is a plug that needs to be plugged in here, and there's a plug that needs to be plugged in on either side of the front here when the ceiling pieces go on, so roof panels go on. But you must plug this piece in because that's going to be what powers your chromotherapy light. So I'm just going to lift this up into place. Yeah. Come to here. So that's going to be sitting in here. Now just be mindful I've got that piece here. It needs to be plugged in first, and that's just a clip exercise, and that'll run your chromotherapy lamps, and then I can slide this all into place. Now, one thing I recommend you do when you put your ceiling panel in place, before you put the roof on, I recommend you plug it in and just start it and make sure that everything is working before you put the roof on, because the roof is the heaviest part, it's the most effort, and you're better off doing a test with everything to make sure it's all working with your lights and etc. before you put the roof on, because you don't want to have to take that off again and play around with that a second time. So just having a look at this, you'll notice that that beam there and the beam there fit on the inside of this part of the roof, and just want to make sure that that's evenly balanced down, and we've obviously got that plug in place. So you'll find that the weight of that board across the back there will hold much of the weight, and so what we're going to be aiming to do with this next one is to lift it up into place and press it against lift it up onto the top here. We'll connect that wire, so we've got lighting at the front, and then we'll be fully connected. As a guide, know that this edge here of timber is going to sit just inside that piece here. And so you start it off there, lift yours up, Zach. Yep. Lift it up, keep going, slide that up. Now I'm just going to connect this power now before we put it right up. On the way to that. Out of the way. We can slide that all the way. So the first thing I'll be doing is putting these screws in place, front and back, and then I'll be putting the cap on. 4 screw points on the front and back that'll pull all this together. So basically what I'm looking to do is to get that screw into here and screw that in all the way. You'll want a little short screwdriver like I've got here to make that possible. This is the indicator that that's the front with the light on it. So when you're deciding which panel to go where, make sure you organise all that before you start assembling. Alright, so the very last piece to go on is your capping piece. Now there are a couple of screws, and just understand that this is a bituminous material, so when it heats up in the sun, it's actually going to melt into place and really become a really strong and secure waterproofing agent. But just need to lift this back for the purpose of just drilling that into place, so I'll just grab that. Secure that down. Put this back down, and just where your staples were, just tap them back into place. Like I said, it's just to hold it in place, just until the heat allows that to all just set into place. Right, so same again, I grab that screw, and just secure that down into place. Tap down those staples again. Line these up, run that through. You'll have the washer on the outside between the bolt and the glass. Tighten those up. We'll do again the same for the bottom. Sits here all the way along the front. And I just run that. It'll seal that edge, and I'll go all the way around the perimeter to do that exercise. Okay, so to seal that off, I'm just going to get in here with a bit of silicone, and just to make sure water can't ingress in that here, so I'm just going to go along that edge with a little bead of silicone. I don't want excess silicone here, so I'm going to apply that really carefully just to seal it off. I don't want a big skew of silicone across the glass, but I want to make sure that I don't get water ingress through this base point. And I'll run it up the side as well. So I'll run it into that corner, pull that right down. To that base, pull it up. Okay, so when you're doing your door, you want your hinges to be facing that way, and it's with this checked out section that's actually going to be sitting into this area here. And you'll see that there's a plastic piece that's going to be separating from the glass, and there's also that spacer. So make sure all of that's in place, and you've got the spacers on the other side. There'll be double spacers on the other side. So we'll put that in place first. All right, a little tip here just for when you're finishing things off. Just with your hinges here, just loosen these off so that they are just a bit loose. And you get a couple of packers that are just, in this instance, I've got they're about a 1/2 mil packer. I'm just going to sit them on there. So when I actually close the door, those are loosened off. it'll sit down onto those packers. And so that's the minimal gap. And then I go through, tighten these up, and that'll set that at that mil gap, or less than a mil gap, which I wanted the base to make that as minimal water as possible can get through that edge. The other thing I'll do is come down this edge and just see if there's any gaps here. If there are, I can just pull that out a little bit just to get it so that it's going to make sure that there's a good seal all the way across this edge. So just pull it out where it needs to, where it just needs a little bit of gapping, and that just makes sure that I minimise the chance of any water ingress.